Hi kawan, welcome to EDCReady. Today we have another first impressions video. Now this knife, it is a Spyderco knife. I bought this second hand from a guy named Wilson here in my home country. He is part of the EDC community Malaysia. Now this knife is one of those knives that I would consider to be my only knife. If someone just came up to me, told me I only had one knife that I could use for the rest of my life and that would be the only knife I could use, this knife would be a serious contender. Now, it is not a very expensive knife and I bought this second hand from Wilson, so it's even cheaper than if I were to buy it new, but it's in such great condition that I had to jump on the gun. And this knife is your Native 5 Salt. So, for those of you who are maybe new to the community, Spyderco is an American company and then they have factories all around the world. They have factories in Taiwan, China, Japan and Colorado, USA. And this knife is from their Colorado factory. Now, why is it salt? Because this knife is almost completely rust proof. There is no functional way to make this knife rust. You know, you have a steel that's completely rust proof. You have a hardware that is not only very stainless in nature but also coated to help prevent it from rusting. And this knife, the Native 5 Salt, is one of the knives, I would say maybe in my top 3 of knives that I would carry for the rest of my life. Like that one particular knife, if I had to choose, this would very much be in that top 3. Now, first impressions of this knife, and I'm going to be comparing it to another Spyderco. I have the Spyderco Para 3 lightweight here. And when I first took this knife out, I took it out of the box in the car. I couldn't wait to get home, but I spent less than half a day with this guy and I just want to share with you guys my first impressions. First things first, the FRN is actually very nice. Now both of these guys are made in a Golden, Colorado, USA. And they both use FRN, but the FRN in the Native 5 Salt actually feels different. It has a nice svelte feeling compared to this guy. This guy is definitely smooth. It has that felt feeling, but it's just not as smooth or not as polished as this guy. So that's the first thing that jumped into my mind. Just the feeling in the hand of the FRN, it feels just much more premium than this guy. It has more of a felt feeling. But contrasting to that, being a salt knife is meant to be used in watery situations. Maybe you work out at sea, you know, you don't want your knives to rust. It has a lot more gription in the scale pattern. Now, the texturing on the scales are very similar. However, this is a little bit shallow and this is not only a little bit deeper but also a little bit sharper. So this actually gives a lot stronger, texture, a more grippy texture than this guy. Okay, in terms of the rounding of the edges here, they're kind of the same. This guy has a little bit more contouring on the sides here, a little bit more rounding off in the sides there, but this one is okay. In terms of pocket clip, I prefer the wire clip a little bit more. I also prefer a deep carry pocket clip on the Para 3 lightweight compared to this guy, although there are a lot of aftermarket clips for this guy. It is black to prevent rusting, of course. Opening it up, it is a very rough kind of, it's a kind of rough open. Now, given that it's a backlock, backlocks are typically rougher to open. You're always going to get pressure because of the backlock spring, but it has a lot of grittiness to it. Okay, now I have not taken it apart and cleaned it up yet. It might improve the action, but I'll let you guys know. But no, coming used out of the box, it is a little bit grippy. Okay, that being said, it locks up extremely strong. It has a very strong, very solid lockup. Has no blade play whatsoever and then no rock at all. So in contrast, this guy, you do have this fall shutty kind of action, but because it only has a washer on one side and the other side is just a plastic, it's always going to have just a little bit of blade play if you want it to still drop like that. But this guy, no blade play, but it does come out a little bit rougher. I understand that it's going to be not as smooth because it is backlock, but I might need to tweak the pivot a little bit. The thing that really stood out for me was when I had this in my hand, the Ergonomics. I've held a Native 5 before, a much older Native 5. I think it's one of those S35VN ones. And this is the first time I've held one of the newer Native 5s. And my god, this has the best ergonomics I've felt in any knife. You know, I've had ZTs. This guy, not so great in ergonomics. Okay, I've had the Benchmade Bug Out. Okay, pretty good in ergonomics, but very neutral. You know, you can hold it in multiple different ways. You have the Para 3 lightweight, which is also very comfortable in hand in terms of the ergonomics in hand. In terms of the shape of the handle and the blade, it actually fits well in hand. But the ergonomics are not as good because of these sharp edges at the top. Okay, on the inside right there. Now these, because they're FRN, you are going to get those sharp edges, but because it has a back spring and it has this back spacer right here, okay, you don't really feel these sharp edges dig into your hand a little bit, so that keeps it extremely comfortable. And coupled with this very nice clip that's actually very nicely positioned, it just folds into your hand in a way that a knife has never held in my hand before. Definitely the most comfortable knife I've ever held was my friend's Native 5, and the Native 5 Salt has the exact same feeling. Okay, and another thing that really stood out for me is that the edges in the center here, in the hole here, are actually less sharp than other Spydercos. Even compared to the Para 3 lightweight, you do have this little sharp corner right here, and it's even worse in the Dragonfly. The Dragonfly's hole is actually pretty darn sharp. This guy is actually rounded off some of the edges right here, and I think that's quite nice. It actually makes the opening and closing action a little bit better on this knife. Now, I do not know if that is Wilson's doing, if he rounded off the edges here. I will double check him with that. But I've also heard from other reviewers that the whole of the Native 5 is actually a lot more gentle in terms of its sharpness compared to the Japanese-made Spydercos. Action, opening it up is really rough, but closing it is not bad. You press this spring and then it just drops. Okay, just like that. You don't even need to shake it. Like the Dragonfly, you need to shake it a little bit, but this guy just pinch here and it's gonna drop, and then just push it on the way down. Okay, and the reason why I consider this possibly the only knife I would ever carry is for a few reasons. Number one, it is very lightweight. Okay, hence the name Native 5 lightweight, but this is the Salt version. Number two, I already mentioned this, very comfortable in hand. Great ergonomics, great for cutting for long periods of for long hours of cutting. But the fact that it's a salt knife, the fact that it is using this steel, LC200N, a steel that is in every practical way rust proof. Now, you might, if you really try, you might be able to get this to rust, but I've not seen it rust on any rusting test videos out there on YouTube. That gives it a feeling that this knife is a knife that you do not need to worry about at all. That is a knife that you can carry it in any condition, coupled with the fact that it's a backlock, so it's pretty hard used, coupled with the fact that it's a relatively stout blade, okay, coupled with the fact that it is practically rust proof. This is the kind of knife that you can just carry and not need to worry about it at all. Now, this is just a first impression. Do not take this as a full review because I have not fully carried this knife. I have not taken it apart. So do watch out for those videos coming up soon. And as always guys, stay ready.